Welcome back, friends, to Course 15 and the massive open online course for mission transition. Course 15 is focused on understanding your financial needs. Here are our objectives, and they are to understand your financial needs and compensation differences, as well as understand differences between military and civilian benefits packages. In doing so, we'll develop a couple of skills. First, the ability to establish a financial BATNA standing for Best Alternative to No Agreement, for negotiation purposes. This will follow on and impact our next course when we talk about that skill. Our next skill is to develop a realization of who pays for what benefits and how they get incorporated into your compensation package. Very important, friends, likely the first time in the course of your career where you've had to ponder these differences. And we do get into quite a number of details. I urge you to stick with me because this will have a direct impact on not only your initial compensation package, but how that directly impacts your future ability to build wealth for yourself and your family. Please refer to Chapter 9 in Mission Transition. Lots more detail in there, and especially on my website. Please take notes, and please be able to gain access to my website. As we go through this course, you'll find there's any number of downloads you're going to need in order to conduct these exercises. You'll find me on a number of social media platforms, and as always, helpful to do it with someone that's gone through the process before. I would also urge you to reference financial professionals. I am neither a CPA, a certified public accountant, nor a CFP, a certified financial planner. What I am, however, is an MBA. I have a master's in business administration, and I've done voluminous homework to support the detail contained herein. That said, we're going to review any number of assumptions that you're going to want to run past whoever's helping you with your own individual financial planner. Hopefully that's enough of a caveat. That said, let's get into it here. In this instance, we're talking about deciding on your role, and a key part of that is determining what you're going to need to ultimately retire, some of you perhaps for the second time, and backing into that, what you'll need to earn on an annual basis. And so let's conduct a few exercises here. The first exercise we're going to focus on is helping you determine your required retirement savings. As Stephen Covey, the author, likes to say, let's begin with the end in mind. And that's exactly what we're doing there. Understanding that, we can then back into our required annual salary. And we'll go through a separate exercise to analyze the differences that income taxes have on our salaries and earnings, both in and outside of the military. Our next exercise will be to compose an annual budget, and then finally to compare military and civilian benefits. Again, friends, we'll cover the wave tops here. Strongly encourage you to read through all the details in the book and all of the details on my website, which go in a lot more detail. You also see that I'm referencing a huge number of resources here, again, which I encourage all of you to take advantage of. That said, let's get into the exercises. First exercise here, determine our required retirement savings. You can see the link here to access the free downloads, and I'll take you there momentarily. Here is a snapshot of the first exercise, the instructions you see down below. Download the worksheet from the first financial needs exercise on my website. It will prompt you to enable or disable macros. Please enable macros. Enter the assumptions in the yellow highlighted portion of the snapshot that you see here. Click enter every time that you change those assumptions, and that will run all of the formulas underlying the graph to the right. Once you've done that, look at the graph and modify and rerun your assumptions in the macro until the blue line goes above, preferably well above, 0 on the graph until you've reached your life expectancy. So I'm going to pivot here to my website just to show you where these exercises are at, and then I'll demonstrate to you how we actually do this exercise. So on my website, you'll see the resources tab. On the resources tab, one of the resources there is the financial needs exercises. While I'm here, friends, Please note the voluminous number of resources available to you. I constantly refer to them throughout these courses. Please avail yourself of all of these. At the moment, we're focusing on financial needs, so click there. Once you do, you'll arrive at this page, and you'll see that there's 3 financial exercises. First exercise that we'll go through momentarily, second exercise, and then third. Coming back to the first exercise, what you're going to do is click on Retirement Worksheets, and this will download for you an Excel spreadsheet, again, prompting you to enable or disable macros. You want to enable the macros. So let's go to the retirement worksheet. Once you enable the macros, you'll see something that looks like this. And I'm going to go through this exercise 2 different times with 2 different scenarios. The first, applying some assumptions that I'll assume will correlate to a junior military professional, someone leaving the service relatively early in their career, and then a career military professional, someone that's leaving well on in their career, perhaps with a pension. And so what I've done, I've already preloaded some assumptions at hand. You can see where I've done this. I've run the macro, and here we see the blue line goes below 0 by the time we anticipate our life ending. And that sounds very heartbreaking to say, but that is the nature of life, and that's the nature of financial planning. And you're welcome to extend that as far as you want. Just know that if you extend it further to the right, you're going to need money to live on during that time period. Nonetheless, the point of the graph is we will not have, based on these assumptions, enough money to fund our living expenses by the time we reach that point. So we need to change our assumptions here. I will focus on changing the amount of savings we'll need at our retirement age to meet that 80-year life expectancy with a retirement age of 65. And again, you can change any or all of these assumptions for the sake of this exercise. I'm going to just change one of them, being total savings required at retirement at 65. So I changed it from $500,000 to $750,000, reran, and lo and behold, assuming that these assumptions hold true, that we will have sufficient financial means to sustain us at least through year 80, assuming we retire at 65 and all of these other assumptions hold true. So that's how that works. This would be, again, kind of a junior military professional scenario. Now, let's approach the same exercise from that of a career military professional. And let's also assume a life expectancy of 80 years, retiring at 65. Let's assume that we've got a bit more in the bank, so let's maintain the 750,000. The key difference here, though, would be the pension. Let's assume that we have a pension, and let's assume that pension is, say, 50% of 100,000, and so the annual pension would be $50,000. We rerun our macro, and lo and behold, we have a much higher blue line here, which means we could probably get away with having less savings at retirement. So I'm going to change this assumption again. I'll rerun it. And there, while it's trending down, it's still well above what we would need at 80 years old to sustain ourselves. So there you see, frankly, the big difference between a junior military professional, career military professional, and the strength, if you will, of having that annual pension available to you. All right, so let's go back to our PowerPoint and talk through the retirement savings and how we might improve upon those options. Okay, so let's walk through these. What we could potentially do, again, our assumptions in the current scenarios have us retiring at 65. Well, we could certainly delay that till 67, 70, or later. For CMPs, we could decide to stay in the service longer than 20 years to maximize the pension percentage for which you're eligible. For JMPs and non-retired CMPs, we could consider additional time in the reserves or the Guard to eventually qualify for a pension, albeit from the reserve component. We can optimize our and our spouse's incomes prior to retirement to optimize Social Security payments in retirement and optimize the incremental amount you can contribute to savings on an annual basis. We can retire to a state that provides more favorable tax treatments to retirement income. We'll talk more about that momentarily, as well as military pensions. Check out WalletHub. They have a cool app there. It produces an annual ranking of best and worst states for military retirees. Maximize employer-sponsored 401ks or 403bs. These are retirement plans, or better yet, Roth versions of both, every year while you're employed following your departure from the service. Not only does it minimize your taxable income, it adds to your retirement savings by qualifying you for your employer's match. If applicable, take advantage of an employer-sponsored 457 savings plan, again, an optional retirement plan that some organizations offer. Roll over your thrift savings plan from the military into a Roth IRA or invest any incremental net income into a Roth IRA. This is going to minimize your tax burden in retirement. Make annual contributions to an IRA or a Roth IRA if you have any surplus on an annual basis, applying the budget that we'll talk about in a moment. That's a great place to stash it. Minimize your annual expenses both before and after retirement, and minimize fees that any brokerage firm are going to assess on your investments. Those are all ways to improve the assumptions in those scenarios that we just walked through in the Excel spreadsheet. So consider those and applying those to your situation to help you optimize the wealth that you'll build over time. And so that's exercise 1. Understanding that end in mind now, let's focus on exercise 2. Exercise 2 being, what will we need to have in terms of an annual salary to meet that required retirement savings dollar? And here again, we'll take you back to my website. We're going to download a separate spreadsheet from a second financial needs exercise. When you click on this, much as we did with the first exercise, you're going to be prompted to enable or disable macros. Again, enable the macros. Enter the assumptions on the left side of the page in the shaded yellow area, much as we did the first time. Click enter to run the macro, which changes the formulas behind the graph, and you'll see the lines on the graph change as well. Observe the graph. And the idea here is to make sure that the blue line exceeds the orange line. And if it doesn't, you need to modify your assumptions and rerun the steps above until the blue line is above the orange line by the time you reach your projected retirement age. Again, for our example here, we're talking about 65 being our retirement age. So let's go back to our website and show you where that's located. If I scroll back to the top, again, based on resources, we're going to go to the financial needs exercises page. Here's our second exercise, determine required annual salary. If we scroll down, here's your required annual salary calculator. If you click on that, you'll be prompted to enable or disable macros. Please enable those macros. And from there, we will result this spreadsheet, or something that looks very similar to it, will pop up. Now, I'm going to urge you to have a little bit of recall here from our first exercise and recall the junior military professional scenario. So let's assume we have a junior member of the service, someone that left around 27 years of age. Let's assume they have a little something in the bank, $50,000. We're making several assumptions here about tax rates, federal, state, local, fee assumptions around fees, Social Security, Medicare, et cetera. Now, recall that the junior military professional needed about $750,000 upon retirement at age 65, with a life expectancy of 80 years. And I've gone ahead and ran this, and it turns out that this individual, in order for the blue line to exceed the orange line, will need $90,000, and this assumes minimal inflation over the course of this time horizon to meet that savings goal. Okay, so let's look at it from a career military professional standpoint, and I will assume someone that entered the military, say at year 22, has had a minimum 20 years in. So let's say that individual's 42 years old. Let's say they have a bit more savings available. Let's just double that because they have that much more time. We had said that that individual could get away with, given the same assumptions, of $500,000 retirement required savings at retirement. And let's run this scenario and see what it looks like. The big thing I forgot there is the pension. And that pension, as we said, was $50,000. So let's enter that, rerun our scenario. Now, whoa, you can really see the importance that a pension has over the long haul. And these are, many years, 23 years from the time you're 42 to 65. So we don't need to make at least $90,000 a year. Let's break it down, say around 60,000. Can we get away with that? When we certainly can. And we can probably drop it even lower than that. For the sake of time, we'll keep going on. Again, friends, there is the power of having a pension and some additional cash in the form of an annuity above and beyond the funds that we'll be bringing on, the income that we'll be bringing in from the role that we're applying for coming out of the military. Incredibly important. So let's go back and revisit our PowerPoint. Let's bring that back up. So there's your required annual salary, and you can go in, modify those assumptions to fit whatever your scenario is. You're going to want to look up, again, all those different rates and tweak these assumptions as need be. But there's a tool for you to leverage and download. Please seek out financial advice and assistance where it makes sense, and if you get into any kind of complicated financial situations. Next download I'd like to point you to is a pay stub comparison. This is a lead into our income tax analysis. And the reason why this is important is because the way that your income is treated in the military is very different than the way it's treated outside of the military. You have allowances in the military that aren't get taxed and that make up a decent portion of your income. Those don't exist on the outside, and whether or not you receive a pension, those are taxed in different ways on the outside as well. And so, well, I'll talk you through the instructions here, and then I'll go back to my website. There's a pay stub comparison worksheet you'll find on that second financial needs exercise. We want to enter assumptions in the yellow shaded portion above, and then observe the outcomes in the spreadsheet to the right, and adjust your assumptions as need be. The outcome will be reflected here in the yellow highlights in the bottom of the page. Why this is important, it'll determine to what level or degree your net income, your after-tax income, exceeds or is underneath that which you realized while you were in the military. Okay, so you want to incorporate this outcome, this knowledge, into your negotiation planning as you go into it with your prospective employer. So again, let me go back to my website. I just want to show you where this exists. Again, financial needs exercises under resources. We're in the second exercise to determine our annual salary. If we keep scrolling down below there, you'll see the pay stub comparison worksheet. And from there, you can download that. There are no macros in this one. But what will come up here will be a spreadsheet that looks very much like this one right here that you saw in the picture. And once again, you can modify these assumptions as need be. Note that, and it's very important to note that the treatment of income at the state level and local level of pensions and military income is very different depending on whether you're in or outside of the military. That's why all these assumptions are very critical. So let's look at how these things actually play out just to demonstrate precisely what I'm talking about. Again, back to the PowerPoint we go. So let's view this from a couple of different angles, much as we did earlier with a junior military professional and a career military professional. Let's review these in turn. So junior military professional assumptions. Let's assume that this individual's assignment location on active duty is at Fort Hood, Texas. Upon departing, they relocate to Virginia, all right, the greater DC area. Let's assume this person's in 03 with at least 3 years of service. They're drawing a basic military salary, no special pay or allowances like combat pay, flight pay, etc. And we're going to assume an identical salary after the military. Let's assume the low end of BAS and BAH for being at Fort Hood. Okay, and you can see the rates as they're reflected there. Federal tax rates assume that this individual is married, filing jointly, using tax tables as of the time this was written. Also, let's assume that this individual is not deployed and thus their income is not exempt from federal taxes. Social Security taxes are, as noted, same with Medicare. Texas, as a state, has no state income tax. Virginia, on the other hand, does have state income tax, and you can see what those percentages are. This analysis, I'll add, ignores the impact of healthcare insurance, some portion of which you will pay for in any civilian role, which you don't in the military. And so, using the spreadsheet that I just indicated, here's what it looks like for the junior military professional. So you can see the numbers, the percentages in comparison scenario A, which is time in the military, to scenario B. The upshot here is you're getting taxed more and you're paying less. How is that so? Well, you'll note the BAS and BAH lines. These are allowances that were not taxed while you were on active duty, and you're no longer receiving them when you're outside of the military. Okay, and frankly, these add up, if you do the math, to almost a quarter of your income on an annual basis. Moreover, you pay no state income taxes living in Texas while you were in the military. And so if you highlight on the bottom line up front here, for an equivalent baseline salary, you would realize a 34% decrease in the after-tax income upon leaving the military based on these factors. Think about that. That's more than a third less all in from what you were making take-home pay in the military. And so to approximate the same standard of living in our assumed location, Virginia, following the military, you would need to realize a 52% increase in your after-tax income. Think about that. Again, the power of differences and allowances and taxes before and after the military. Now, there's other things to consider when we look at the career military professional scenario. We'll use the same assumptions here, but with a few exceptions. Let's assume a $100,000 annual salary, which is something between an 04 and an 05 with 20 years in service, again, using current military pay tables. Assume the identical base salary upon leaving the military, and BAH rates for an E8 at Fort Hood with dependents are as seen, as shown, and a retiree's annual punch-in is 50% of 100,000 based on military retirement at 20 years. And so in these scenarios, we'll compare life in the military to two scenarios on the outside, one with a pension and one without a pension. All right, note the differences here. With your pension, your after-tax income actually increases outside the military. And what I'm doing here, I'm comparing scenario C to the scenario D. Scenario C being in the military, scenario D being outside the military with a pension. If you look at the bottom line, we're comparing the 92,000 to 87,000. And so the negative 6% indicates that your after-tax income is higher on the outside. Whereas scenario E, being outside the military without the pension, again, friends, the big importance and difference that a pension can make, you're making 29% less than you did. Okay, why? Well, again, you're getting taxed more and paid less, much as the scenario was on the JMP side. Again, your allowances, BAS, BAH, aren't taxed while you're on active duty. All right, you don't realize these when you're on the outside, again, which represents about a quarter of your income. You pay no state income taxes living in Texas. And you obviously don't have a pension in scenario E. And again, what's the outcome of all this? You realize a 29% decrease in after-tax income from your time on active duty if you don't have a pension, and you would need a 41% increase and your civilian after-tax income to equate to your active duty standard of living. Here's the last point I want to make on this. When comparing scenario D to scenario C, for those of you that are retired and drawing a pension, this is why sometimes civilian employers may see fit to lowball you on their offer. They know that you're earning a pension, and they think that they can get away with offering you less because they know you're potentially making more in light of that pension. So just keep that in mind. We'll revisit that fact as we get into the negotiation process. So how to positively influence the outcome in light of this income tax treatment analysis. Negotiate an optimal salary compensation package. We'll talk more about how to do that on our next course. Maximize annual contributions to your 401k, 403b, or better yet, a Roth version of those, thus minimizing taxable income and increasing retirement savings by qualifying for your employer's match. If your spouse works, consider enrolling in only one benefits package. You'll both likely be offered them for healthcare coverage. Also consider the TRICARE option. Consider taking advantage of any employer-sponsored flexible spending plans. And what these do is set aside pre-tax dollars for needs you may have in areas like healthcare, daycare, transportation, or parking. Alternately, consider a health savings account, which can help offset or minimize the amount that costs you for some of your health coverage. Consider retiring to a state that provides favorable tax treatment to retirement income and military pensions. Some states tax these, some do not. WalletHub is a website that produces an annual ranking of best and worst states for military retirees. For career military professionals, consider staying in the service longer to maximize the pension percentage for which you're eligible. And for JMPs or non-retired career military professionals, consider additional time in the reserves or guard to eventually qualify for a pension. Again, looking at our examples, you can see the power that pension has for retirement planning purposes. Minimize your annual expenses, and we'll talk about creating and maintaining an annual budget here momentarily. You want to stick to it. Minimize fees that any brokerage firm would assess you on your investments and helping you maintain them. So we've talked about putting together a budget, and going back to my website, you will see a free download. If I go back to my resources tab, you'll see there's a budget pro forma template. If my website will catch up with me, is there for you to download. And there it is, the website. It's not keeping up with me. Okay, so there's the form. And what is an annual budget? Well, it's a very basic, simple, yet most critical and oftentimes overlooked financial management tools available to you and your family. This is something I highly recommend you do. It is a simple way to keep track of your household income and spending on a month-to-month basis. It ensures the amount that you spend doesn't exceed the income that you make. And ideally, you have some left over that you can contribute to your savings. Helps you maintain a positive monthly balance and a positive annual balance, assuming you do that on a monthly basis. Also helps you adjust spending and expense categories if that threatens to not be the case. And there's many software tools available to help you enable this. The spreadsheet I have available for download is a very simplistic version, and there are plenty of other free ones available online. Again, any of which I urge you to take advantage of, use, and maintain on an active, ongoing basis. All right, so to our last exercise here, to compare military and civilian benefits. I'm gonna pivot here back to my website real quickly, just to demonstrate where this detail exists so that you can likewise take advantage of it. You see the third exercise here under financial needs exercises. And we're about to go through all of the detail that you see down here. You're welcome to print all this out and add any of your own additional detail as it would make sense for your particular situation. So understand that going into comparing your benefits, both in and out of the service, that compensation packages that you're going to be offered for your civilian opportunities consist of much more than just a base salary. All right, there are many benefits upon which you depend in the military. You're likely oblivious to it, but most of them represent some sort of monetary value. In transitioning to the civilian world, you're going to need to assess which combination of these benefits you need and how much they're actually worth. The total annual monetary value of these benefits should be used to compare your military compensation package to the compensation package of your prospective employer. What does their total offer look like? Doing so will get you the apples to apples comparison that you need to have to judge the relative merit or value of the offer that you're getting from your prospective employer and that which you're used to and coming from the military. And so these following slides break down the various portions that I just quickly scanned through on my website. Again, I urge you to print this out and identify apples to apples how the civilian equivalent portion of the compensation package compares to that which you're used to and coming from the military. And so this first slide focuses on benefits associated with the income portion of your compensation package. You can see the detail here. This slide focuses on the healthcare benefits. You'll see there's lots and lots of military benefits and less so on the civilian side, all having varying values. And the legend there as to how I've tried to qualitatively compare the relative values of these things. Retirement benefits, again, critically different, both on the military and civilian side. Review these, judge them as you will. The net outcome of this, by the way, of this assessment will result in a number of things that we'll want to potentially ask about and negotiate for following this. I'll jump to that in a moment. Education benefits. These exist in different scenarios. And let me draw your attention to the post 9/11 GI Bill, the Forever GI Bill. Incredibly valuable for you, as well as the Survivor and Dependents Educational Assistance Program. Okay. PTO and reserve component benefits for those of you remaining in the service, important to consider whether or not your employer offers compensatory packages of pay while you're deployed, or for that matter, continue to support you while you're on military leave for any purpose. Relocation benefits. Inevitably, both upon departing military and after you've landed a role at your new organization, will that organization pay for your relocation to the next site? And you'll note some quotes in my book about how relocation in the real world differs somewhat significantly from the moves that you've potentially done in the military. Again, you want to compare, contrast these things, decide what you need, and factor those needs into an eventual negotiation. Home office benefits. Typically, many more benefits available to you on the civilian side. Severance benefits, something that most folks don't necessarily consider coming out of the military, but given the employment at will approach that most civilian employers take, and we'll talk more about that later on in this MOOC, it's important to understand what may kick in should you be caught up in a reduction in force or a RIF of some sort. Other benefits, and there's lots of other benefits, both on the military side, even more so on the civilian side, all of which you should consider, some of which may not be offered. So consider this list of things that if it's something that you feel that you need or want to add as part of the to be negotiated compensation package, it's something to bring up. Nothing ventured, nothing gained here. And those continue here as well. Also note, just as an FYI, on the military benefit side, there's a number of things, you may not have been aware of this, but there's a number of things that you've had access to and potentially have taken them for granted, all of which are considered benefits, all of which hold some value, potentially significant value to you while you were in the military. All right, so comparing the military and civilian benefits, you need to understand your retirement needs and your corresponding annual net income. Understand that compensation is treated differently outside the military. We went through the exercise to do that. Judge the contents of any civilian compensation package on equivalent terms. The exercises we just went through, comparing on an apples to apples basis, and the relative value of each. All right, your military compensation and benefits package is actually quite generous, believe it or not. And your expectations for the same upon departing the military should be adjusted accordingly. Fact of the matter is, as we sit here in 2020, within the past decade, there's been what we called the Great Recession, where on the civilian side, there were many years consecutively where there weren't raises, annual raises, whereas those annual raises came year over year over year in governmental roles. And so things have kind of equilibrated over time. Finally, there are government financial coaches available. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau oversees a program that allows these coaches. When we get to the end here on additional resources, please check out their website if you want to take advantage of this opportunity. All right, so we talked about in comparing the benefits between military and civilian compensation packages. In reviewing all of those things, you should come up with a small subset of benefits that are something potentially that you want to add to the compensation package that's to be negotiated with your prospective employer. Once you've assembled that list, I would do this exercise. So in the first column, obviously identify the benefit. In the second column, identify whether the desired benefit is a requirement, meaning a must-have, or it's simply nice to have. And again, I would make all these decisions and judgments with your partner, spouse, and family members. In the third column, identify whether the prospective employer's compensation package addresses the desired benefit. And then if it doesn't, in the fourth column, what's the action step that you're going to take? All right, you might ask a clarifying question of the employer. Was this something they simply overlooked, or are they actually excluding it? If they are excluding it, assuming that it's a must-have, let's negotiate its inclusion. And then determine if the unaddressed benefit could be addressed by some other combination of the above post-military benefits that we just walked through. Okay, that's a long course with a lot of detail, friends, with a significant number of exercises, but I can't overly emphasize how important these are to help you get situated successfully from the outset and optimize you and your family's wealth over the course of time. So please complete the financial exercises we just reviewed. You'll see references to them in the book, but you'll find all the detail that I just walked you through on my website. Compose your annual budget and please maintain it on a regular basis with monthly totals and annual roll-ups. Complete the compensation package negotiation planning tool. We'll talk through how to actually utilize it in the next course. All right, please refer to the book, as I said, for additional perspective from folks that have already been through this portion of the process, much more detail on this topic on financial exercises, and additional guidance for those of you with greater tenure, and additional resources to support your ongoing transition here. As we always do, let's close with some words to the wise. Understand your financial needs by determining your financial retirement goals and determining your annual cash flow requirements, along with maintaining an annual budget. Understand that military and civilian compensation packages are very different and conduct any comparison on an equivalent basis, apples to apples. Don't expect to earn greater compensation package immediately following your time in service. And take advantage of all the benefits you've earned and that you're eligible for upon departing the service. Please do it within the time window they're available to you. Some of those are only open for a short window. And as I mentioned earlier, please include your family in all of these decisions. Finally, just to foot stomp the VA healthcare. Even if you don't plan on using it in the near term, please enroll in the VA healthcare program. You only have to enroll once, and you never know when you're going to need it. And you can't take advantage of it if you don't enroll from the outset. So please do that upon your departure from the service. Here's the list of additional resources I mentioned. Please note the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau website below if you're looking for help from a coach. Also note that we have a resource here for career military professionals at the bottom of the page. Please take advantage of these resources. All go into much more detail. All can be incredibly helpful above and beyond what I just walked you through, what you'll find in the book and or on my website. If questions coming out of this, here's how to get a hold of me. And let's end, as we always do, with a bonus video. In this instance, it's a video focusing on what you might consider when pondering civilian compensation packages. Here we go.
I'm about to retire from the military. I'm told I could easily land a job making twice as much as I am today. I don't think I need to worry about transitioning from the service. With my pension, I should be good to go, right?
Well, first, thank you for your career of service. You and your family have served the nation well. Your retirement pay is absolutely well earned. But then again, I have some news for you. My observation over many years is that transition becomes more difficult for service members with greater tenure, such as retirees. Unless you transition directly into a defense contractor role or working directly for the Department of Defense, the outside world of the public sector may resemble little of what you formerly knew, and many people struggle with this. Secondly, consider that your cost of living in the military may well be lower than your cost living outside the military. Many of your allowances were tax-free. Taxes on the outside may take a significant chunk out of your take-home pay. My book will point out some tools that'll help you make this comparison so you can go into these decisions with your eyes wide open. Finally, consider that public companies understand that as a retiree, you're drawing a pension. They know you're going into negotiations for a role with a built-in secondary source of income. Some of those organizations may, as a result, feel justified in lowballing the compensation package of your offer. My book will help you compose a negotiation strategy that optimizes your chances for success. Good luck.
All right, friends, we'll welcome you back next time when we begin discussing an approach how to actually conduct those negotiations to benefit you and your family. We'll see you next time.